Hello and welcome again to Autistic Radio on Radio Days. Every Sunday we have a 555. This is Harry's programme. Harry curates a Facebook page, which is a safe place to go and look when you're autistic, unlike some others. And on a Sunday we have a leisurely discussion between us here as a group, knowing that we're going to be recorded, putting a diverse set of opinions out to what we're presented with on the Facebook page. I've got quite a few people here today for Autistic Radio, and I want to remind everyone part of why we're here this day and these days during Christmas and New Year is to reach out to other autistic people to make them have a place that they can drop into. We call it Backstage. Backstage has a link in different places on our website and on our Facebook page, and you can pop in there casually anytime you feel like listening to some other autistic people chattering away, or perhaps even involve yourself in the conversations. If you're isolated at this time of year, there's no need to be entirely lonely. We can be lonely together at Backstage. So this is the live 555 for Harry's Spectrum Voices. What do we have first to look at? Well, obviously it's our own recordings. During Radio Days there's a number of recordings, and a post is created and you can listen to the original recordings with all of the fluffs, all of the silences in them, or you can go to our website and you can listen to podcasts that are made from them. The first post we have from outside the group is quite far down. It's from Panda, and Harry shares Panda a lot. We see a lot of sense being spoken from Panda. Here it starts with, only 23% of autistic people in a new multi-country survey felt society actually accepts them as autistic. Less than 1 in 4. And the post goes on, but listening to that, 1 in 4 people feel in a survey that they are accepted as autistic people. I feel that's a bit high.
Seems high to me as well.
Looking further into the post, it's an article in Forbes magazine, a business magazine. The Forbes piece reports on a survey of 306 autistic adults, so quite a small group, across 8 countries, so quite a tiny group in each country then, looking at how accepted they feel in everyday life. And autistic participants in Japan and Belgium reported the lowest levels of societal acceptance, while those in Canada, the UK and South Africa reported somewhat higher. But none of those levels are high. Like you, Nicola, I just think acceptance, understanding, autism, I feel that we're so far away from that. To say that 25% or 23% or 10% of people out there have a sense of what autism means to somebody like me or you seems really far-fetched.
And I think it's changing. I think it comes and goes in waves. So, for example, in the United States right now, I think license has been given to society to not be accepting.
Yeah, there's a license that's been given to society at the moment. That sounds like you're alluding to the anti diversity DEI campaigns that are happening in the North Americas. Um, Robbie says on this, he doesn't feel accepted in most places, and he would say in most places it's more being tolerated than accepted. So if we look to what Ray is pointing out in the post there, Panda goes on to say that acceptance is not the same as awareness. Most of these countries have autism awareness campaigns, yet the study still found that the majority of autistic respondents felt misunderstood, stigmatised or pressured to mask in order to be tolerated. So there we are, straight into this idea. You get tolerated if you are willing to mask enough. You know, making too much of a fuss might not work for you. So there is still an expectation that to be accepted or tolerated, the awareness leads people to request you to mask according to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear up. I don't think that the DEI issue is in North Americas with plural. I think it is the United States, not, and it isn't all the citizens, obviously, of the United States, and then some other places in the world because these cycles come around. Uh, I feel like Canadians often react in an opposite way to the United States, especially right now. So, I mean, I haven't noticed anybody's really more accepting or less accepting, but I think generally we're a more polite society.
Yeah, it's important you say that, Teresa. I would say, though, here in Europe, in the UK, and in other countries around Europe, there is a general sense that the pendulum has swung and that the cycle is against these inclusive ideas. We're having that in the UK in some small parties. So, yeah, not just the United States, but there's a generalised feeling that there's a backlash against what we have previously seen as more accepting, inclusive ways of dealing with the wide range that we have in society.
I think you only have to look at the benefit system and schools, what's happening, to see it's getting very much anti-autistic.
Ray's highlighting in the post here that the survey numbers are a mirror. They tell us less about autistic deficits and more about whether our countries are willing to question ableist norms and redesign systems around the concept of human diversity. So why this matters for all of us, Panda says, is that when a society is hostile or indifferent, autistic people pay the price in mental health, employment disadvantage, safety disadvantage, and basic dignity disadvantage. But also everybody loses out because they lose out on access to our skills, our insights, and our creativity also. The survey looks at autistic people and comes up with the conclusion from that small number of people that autistic people do not feel as though they are included within society in a meaningful way. And that's something we really do have to work on individually and as a group.
in a lot of ways, a lot of the improvements have been reversed in schools.
Would anybody like to put some more words to this post or the highlight before we move on?
I'll just say this one thing about the last highlight, which was if your country hasn't caught up yet. So the last highlighted part was if you are autistic, your way of being in the world is valid, even if your culture has not caught up yet. I just want to say that it comes in these waves. So whatever they are, political waves, economic waves, you know, every every part of society has its moment. And if the moment right now is less DEI, and it is around the world in certain pockets, um, the wave should come back around again. And so, in the time between the next wave of acceptance, education needs to happen somehow, whether it's underground, just like any other important thing has to happen when we get these waves in society, in politics, in propaganda culture, whatever we want to call it. Now is the time so that when the next wave comes around, people, when they are allowed to be accepting, have more information about what they're accepting.
Isn't Forbes magazine a business magazine?
You know, it's a business magazine, but it isn't. Um, my feeling about it is that it's not more than something that posts press releases. It's not a mighty publication.
I think we might be tiptoeing about the concept that we might feel that Forbes has a certain bias, but maybe we don't know enough about it to express that out loud.
Well, looking at the screen right now, their first tab of content is billionaires, which is interesting.
So on to the next post. And again, it's somebody that Harry shares from a lot, the autistic Senko. Why are people frightened of the word autism? When I tell people I'm autistic, there's often a pause, not a cruel one, not a nasty one, just a moment of silence where you can almost see the thinking happening. What does this mean? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And what am I supposed to say now? Is this familiar to people?
My first reaction is what people are you telling that you're autistic, and why? I mean, why would you tell people you're autistic? What does it serve? Because I think the problems of autism, if they are problems, exist even without the name. It's a relationship issue. I think it complicates things if you put terms in.
I find when I've told people I'm autistic, they stop listening and start making assumptions.
I think it feels like a catch-22 with the, the last post as well, because if we kind of don't, if we can't identify ourselves as autistic and kind of have our lives be like a testament to, our strengths, then we can't kind of advocate for acceptance of autism. But in trying to push towards autism acceptance, we can put ourselves in like some serious harm's way. And yeah, like other people say, sometimes it just makes you more vulnerable. So it feels really difficult, and it feels like, yeah, like not necessarily. It's like I don't necessarily think it's a crusade that you'd want to be like encouraging people off it onto, but then at the same time, things like, yeah, how do we get to acceptance without it?
Yeah, you're right. It is a catch-22, Nicola. If I was feeling strong, I might say it to a bunch of people just to get a read on them. So nothing to do with me, really. It would almost be like a weird one sentence survey where if I have a list of people that I say it to and see their reaction, I'm really learning more about them.
I think you have to be very careful who you tell you're autistic because of the way people make assumptions.
I told maybe 5 people when I first found out, and then I stopped telling people because I realized even I didn't know enough about it. So after that, I realized I don't need to tell people.
One of the biggest troubles with autism is it's still framed as a learning difficulty, or people assume it's a learning disability, and they don't think you can look after yourself without them doing things for you.
Well, then there's also the opposite of that too, because more than one thing can be true at the same time. And it is that they assume that you're like a genius or something. And then they want to know, why is this even a problem? What are you talking about?
A bit more from the post. Quite often someone will respond with, "I would never have thought that of you," as if autism is something that you should be able to spot. Others say, "You don't look autistic," which usually tells me far more about their understanding of autism than it does about me, because autism doesn't have a look either. Those moments always make me pause. They reveal something deeper than surprise. There's often discomfort there, sometimes fear, and it raises a question I keep coming back to. Why does the word autism still make people so uneasy? For many people, their understanding of autism has been shaped by stereotypes, often fictional ones. The quirky genius, the socially awkward recluse, the child who doesn't speak or make eye contact. Those portrayals might reflect some autistic people some of the time, but they are narrow and incomplete. So when someone learns that I'm autistic, they instinctively compare me to the version of autism that they already have in their head. And if I don't match it, they may quietly question whether I'm really autistic. If I do match it, they might feel unsure, awkward, or worried about saying the wrong thing. Either way, the stereotype becomes the reference point rather than the person in front of them.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that happening. Um, those three examples, I'm all three of those things, but I also know that many autistic people could be the opposite of all three of those things because we know we can be so many different things. And honestly, I didn't even know what a spectrum was. I thought it was a continuum, and it certainly is not. But one thing I did learn with the handful of people I told at the beginning, I could see people who that was happening to, where they, you know how when you look at a person, you can almost see what they're thinking, or if you know them well, you sort of do know. It's like they're going in their mind and they're thinking, not that, not that. And then you see them realize they only have stereotypes. And so if they're a good person who you know well, they might go away and research and then check in with you. Like, did you see this research, or did you see this description? Is this a good thing that I'm trying to learn? And then you realize, hey, oh, wow, that's an ally. And then you realize, wow, it's really hard to find the right information.
Social workers use stereotypes. What can we expect from the rest of society?
Well, either that, or when they were educated and giving whatever the profession is, it could be a social worker, a medical doctor, a, a testing psychologist, anybody. It depends on when they received their formal education, and then what is provided to them in terms of their annual requirement of, every year they have to do a certain number of hours of professional development. What are they being provided with? It's like any topic. We all know that history is being taught to us in a way that is filtered. Like, we don't really know history if we take it just from our formal education. So I'm not defending the social workers or anybody in a professional situation, but they'd almost have to quit their job for a couple of years to learn the right things. So does the message how does the message get across? It's through groups like ours, and it's not going to happen overnight. And it is through people like Robbie, for example, who gives the same consistent message all the time about what the system is, what his experience of the system that is broken, or Jules, who interviews professionals who's who might be open to a new interpretation of old standards in treatment and communication with people who are autistic.
What's wrong with listening to the person who's expert on the person's autism themselves and their friends and family?
In what context, Robbie? Because in my diagnosis there was a part where they were asking for family members who knew of my history. There weren't any, but you know, they were trying to figure that out. But I think you mean something else, like you want a kind of empowerment of the autistic individual to explain themselves. Yeah?
Whenever I have told people I'm autistic, I've always given an explanation of exactly how autism affects me. I'm fortunate that I've got the skills to be able to speak, but most parents of autistic children will know their children very well, and yet people will ignore it. You only have to look at some of the things I see on some of the or some of the autism pages, how people are just ignored.
And they're being ignored because of stereotypes. Yeah?
Yes, and a bureaucratic, if we're talking about, let's say, the healthcare system or whatever system you're trying to, the educational system, whatever, it could be every system that exists, healthcare, education, the law, like Nicola was saying earlier today about an autistic person dealing with the police. So every system in society, and how are they educated, or what is the checklist they're given if it's not the entire part of their job? Again, it's a chipping away at it, always trying to keep everybody up to date. But like now in Canada, in certain cities, in Toronto, for example, this is not a specifically autistic example, but we have these teams of responders who go not in a police car, but in a van. Very subtly, you know that it's the police, to respond to certain calls that have more to do with maybe a mental health dynamic, which might be how we fall into it, but never mind that aspect of it for the moment. And I noticed that just this year, after they've been doing it for I don't know how long, 5 years, 10 years, there's a new question. And the question is, should the police be leading it? It used to be that they brought around um, counselors, nurses, whoever with them. But now they're saying the counselors and the nurses should be leading it, and the police should just be quietly in the background. So I lost my train of thought a bit, but I think you know why I said it if you're paying attention.
Any support for neurodivergent people should be neurodivergent led, based on lived experience of neurodivergent people. The mental health service don't have a bloody clue, and neither do the police.
There are some times when I feel it's necessary to say something different, Robin. I feel personally that autism itself is still a huge mystery. It's still something that is very new to us in our thinking as a society. And I'm not convinced all the time that solely being autistic is good enough when you're thinking about services, because there is a dynamic where the rest of the world still exists too. If what you're meaning is that there needs to be a much bigger input, and that when autistic people design things for themselves, they should be copied. I'm with you on that. Where I'm not with you is that I don't feel, as a late diagnosed or late identified autistic person, that many of the autistic spaces and autistic situations fit me either, because if it feels as though if you weren't there when they were being created, they're hard to join as you go along, and also an orthodoxy happens in them that I'm uncomfortable with. I'm much happier in the space where people are saying things to me and I'm saying things to them and we're discussing it together, rather than have somebody prescribe it. And I think some autistic spaces do that, and some autistic influencers do that.
Yeah, I do like that way. I almost could see this working in for anything, because and then it leads me to think this. What if this would be such a dream, but no, probably nothing like this would happen. What if neurodivergent people could get the rest of the people in the world to understand, or whoever is teaching people about people, so that we all just fit into the spectrum, even they do somehow, like the spectrum would be bigger, and there you are, whatever you call the people who, like right now we say there's a spectrum, and this is all the miraculous ways that we could be little points of light on the spectrum. But what if the spectrum was made bigger to include people who are thought to be, I don't know what the word is, normal? Do you know what I mean? And then they could see where they are and how different they are from each other.
Well, that's what my GP said to me, but apparently that is like taboo in the community.
The community of bureaucratic people? Like, I mean, it would make filling in a form really difficult, wouldn't it?
No, the like online activist advocacy, autistic neurodivergent community.
I'm so new to it. I don't know.
There was like a rule book when I first arrived, and you had to abide by it, kind of. And one of the rules was not everyone is on the spectrum, which was the opposite of what my GP said. He said, we're all on the spectrum.
I see that as a language thing. I understand what your GP's saying. He's saying that human beings are a diverse group of people. It's an inclusive thing for him to say, or them to say. I like that communication. It's intended to be kind and polite and caring. The reaction to say, no, we're not all on the spectrum, is a rejection, and it's an exclusivity, and the reason it's there has good reason behind it. A protest of saying that yes, there is a big enough difference about autistic people to be discriminated to say that autism is a thing. So the reaction happens to say that no, you cannot say that because it might imply this. But the reality of human existence is that life is about communicating, and it's about society working as a group. That's how human beings work. So prescribing the way people can express themselves is discriminating. So we don't go with that here. we ask people what they mean by things, but we don't tell them what they can and cannot say.
I think that whatever we're doing, like the way Jules, you interview professionals and make a difference to how they see, how they then see or communicate within the industry, like you're chipping away at something, or Robbie, when you clearly give us messaging about you're experiencing within the system and the roadblocks you're coming up against. We are somehow making a difference. I think that's the most important thing right now. It feels slow and might not be obvious, but we're doing a good thing.
Ray's moved us down the Facebook page, and he's moved us to a meme from us: free autistic text and chat, autistic radio, Xmas, and it's got a picture with it from the tour that we did of the different conferences where we spoke and tried to encourage different organisations to understand the equity and communication that comes from the autistic radio model. What I take from these beautiful words that Teresa is saying, when she compliments both Robbie and myself in what we're doing in different ways, just the advocacy of speaking eye to eye with the professionals in a way that doesn't allow them to patronise us means that we find professionals that are willing by their own choice to have that relationship and have that conversation. So partly it's about our refusal to take any other stance. It's a filter to the people that are useful enough, and then we give them a platform to encourage people in their own professions to learn from them because they agree with us.
A GR's popped into the text and commented, "There's always going to be a compromise. Reasonable adjustments is a compromise after all."
A lot of my views come from bitter experience of what social care and the mental health service have done to me and certain mental health charities.
That's true, Robbie, and it's important that you are representing that group of people, but I also represent a slightly different group of people in that I haven't been messed about with any charities or organisations as a service user. I've only been messed about with them by them as somebody who is trying to speak directly to them eye to eye. We're all having it in different ways, just rubbing along and finding our way through it. And as Robbie, you say yourself, meaningful discussion is the only thing that changes things. So it is the attempt at communication that is where we're at. We're having quite a serious day here with your post, Harry. I'm moving to the one from Chelsea Luca, Connector Psychology, from Ballina in New South Wales, Australia. Often we've been pretty impressed with the things that come from Australia. There's more interesting thinking going on that's accessible. Chelsea says that your brain isn't slow, it's thorough. And neurodiverse affirming practice means pacing conversations to match nervous systems, not expectations. And I guess they're saying expectations of society there. So there's a set of memes, quite simple ones. Delayed processing may not actually be delayed. I sometimes think delayed processing is multiple processing for me, thinking so much at the same time that I'm not sure which to choose. Delayed processing may be processing happening at the speed that your nervous system can handle. And I think there's truth in that as well. And a point here is clear. They say that neurodiverse brains often take in more data. So our slow reaction times is because we're doing more, maybe. And the last meme here is masking then adds another layer of processing that we have to do on top of that, because we perceive the need to alter ourselves to fit within the communication model of the group around us, the ND model. That's putting an extra layer of processing need upon our brain, upon our system. So that also might add to the delay. Trauma adds another, because we're experiencing and reminded, and sensory load from the situation we're in. Executive load is something I'm going to miss out. Safety underpins whether we can actually do anything with all of that information. And it takes time. Your brain is doing overtime. Maybe it's not actually delayed. Delayed processing may not actually be delayed, and then it goes round to the beginning.
I was going to use the old phrase, the fine art of conversation, but is there a fine art of conversation? Are there rules? So matching nervous systems is probably a better way to put it, I think, when in relationship and conversation, your world and the world, often I think sometimes we build up an internal world and reality to compensate for one that is too sensitive for us, or too painful at times, too demanding, too trying. But you can't maintain an internal reality. You can't construct your own world that fully. It will collapse. So you have to have these ways of communicating and respecting the energy and nervous systems is really important. So I like this post for bringing that up.
Yeah, I like this post too. It also sort of reminds me that when you're in certain environments and you find more people on your wavelength, you're just safer. They're going at just the right speed. So I'm thinking when I worked at big libraries like the reference library, it's like the kind where you don't go to take out a book, you go to do research, or a university library, you'll be sitting next to a person who doesn't make eye contact, who, is just right. Or now other professional genealogists seem a lot of the time to be similar types of processors to me. And then you end up in completely the other type of situation where you realize, oh, hang on a second. I don't know. I'm just going to make a joke and say something like a cosmetics boutique. Like, I don't know what's going on in here. I'm going to have to leave. In the comments, Jules says back in 5, if that makes a difference to the flow here.
Yeah, what Robbie says in the text there, I am processing far more because I'm having to keep myself safe, anxiety about journey home, etc. is kind of reflecting what I said about maintaining your own world. You know, when it'd be so much easier to just be, you know, part of the world. You know, accept the world and be accepted by the world. Uh, but very often we have to defend ourselves, as Robbie was putting in his post now.
Yeah, very, very important.
Shall I read this next post then? Where is it now? Oh, aye. It's a news item from Harpia News, which is a bit baffling, but the picture says BBC News, and the title is Cardiff couple invited man over for Christmas. He stayed there for 45 years. It's a sort of typically worded kind of clickbait headline, but there you go. Cardiff couple invited man over for Christmas. He stayed there for 45 years. Charlie Buckland, BBC Wales. Alright. Christmas is often thought of as a time of goodwill, but one young couple's act of kindness 50 years ago changed their lives forever. On 23rd of December 1975, Rob Parsons and his wife Diane were preparing for Christmas at their Cardiff home when they heard a knock at the door. Standing at their door was a man holding a bin bag containing his belongings in his right hand and a frozen chicken in his left hand. I don't know where to go with this because it's incomplete.
Oh, I know.
Harry,
I know this
about?
story.
Well, carry on.
Yeah, a young married couple. This is like a headline to try to get you to see it. I don't think it's exact. I presume it's not exactly true that anyway, he came to their house and he did know the man and he was autistic. And the man did know him from school when they were young. And I do think it's a true story that the man said, "Come in," and he did stay with them for the rest of his life. It's an interesting and good story. And there are photographs of the family. I think that the couple who invited him in were a young married couple. I think the man had been to school with the other man, and they just felt they could not, at the time in the 1970s, turn him away. So he lived a very good life within their household. I think it's a long post, but I think it is a Facebook post. And I think these people intuitively just accepted him as a friend and like a family member because he didn't have a family anymore. And it turned into an excellent experience for the rest of his life and for their life. And he was a smart and funny man. One of the things that he would say, because he got a job, and people would say, "Who drives you to work every morning?" And it was the other guy whose house he lived at, who happened to be a solicitor, and he would say to them, "Oh, it's my solicitor," which I think is hilarious because it makes you seem kind of like I don't know, like like you shouldn't mess with this guy. His solicitor drops him off every morning.
Well remembered and well summarised. Yeah, I was very nervous about that post because it seemed clickbaity. You know, it would have been better if it was actually from a BBC News article, semi-trustworthy. But yeah, because often these feel-good stories can be used to draw you in for various reasons. But that's a good story, kind of the traditional kind of Christmas story, isn't it? Well, my father used to say, like, you know, maybe we could go out and find somebody outside who's not got anything this year and bring them in and have them at the table. He was a few drinks down the road when he used to suggest that.
Well, my children used to, when they were very young, suggest that. And maybe being a child is a little bit like having had a few drinks too many. Because one year, um, yeah, my son said, "Stop the car. I recognize that man, and I want to give him a gift." So he gave him one of our gifts, and then it just became a thing we did where um, my children would recognize people who didn't have like a large network, and some were even, I know this is not on topic, but some were even homeless, and they would bring them uh, like a gift, almost like one of those like those boxes with cheese and salami and bread and jam and things. And I would think, how does a child know that that's the perfect gift?
I think Nicola agrees with you in text about children being kind of like one drink too many down the road.
They are. I think everybody gets that I'm not married anymore, but I have two grown children. And my middle grandchild is 6, and he came up to me and said, "Nana, you're not married." This is hilarious. How did you have children? And I thought, well, I guess it's good that you don't know yet. You're 6. And then his sister said, "Well, she was married." And he said, "To who?"
Yeah, the post made me think, Robbie, there's hope for you yet. You could get adopted.
It did make me think of how people who, when they're in the right family, like Robbie's family was such a good family to be in, that it just improves your life so well. And that is why, and it also made me think there are people in society that you meet who just get you. And I don't know how this man, he maybe had a childhood memory and thought, well, that boy at school would always look at me like he got me, and somehow he found his house.
That's been on my mind a bit recently over Christmas, is that, and there's a term that's used sometimes called distributed agency, and it's when you're not doing everything for yourself, by yourself. It's like something, someone enables you or helps you or assists you, gives you access to an ability to stop trying so much yourself and to just be. And grief at this time of year can be strong because a being or a thing that has helped you distribute your agency like that and made you feel at home, if it's not there anymore, then it's a time when you're very sensitive, so it can make it harder for you because there's reminders, you're walking through a life without your companion, say, or your guide, or the thing that made things nice and easy, you know. But it's not over. It's not the end. That's a great lesson of grief. It's there to teach to a certain extent through pain, you know, the real, I suppose.
That's a very, very good point. I can imagine it for so many of us here and so many people in the world. Um, I had my grandmother lived to be almost 100, and my grandparents were people like you're describing who made things seem safe. Once, when my mother got a new job in a new city and moved us there, um, they waited about a year and sold their house and moved not far from us. And not too close, probably, so that they wouldn't be encroaching on her, but close enough so that I could eat lunch at their house every day. I think they knew there was something with me and that they were the kind of people you're describing. And I was lucky enough that she lived until I was about 59 years old. It so happened that my mother died just a year after her, and she wasn't really my go-to. But when I wake up now in the morning, I think I'm not able to be a person like that in the world and in our whole family structure. I'm not equipped like that. I'm not going to be, I'm not the right person to be at the top of a family. I can't be a matriarch. I'm still going to be more like a child, I think, forever. But my daughter, I think, is going to be that way, if that makes any sense. But I'm lucky. I'm not a person whose whole structure was taken from them. And still every morning I wake up and think, oh, nobody is there. There's nobody above me anymore. But I'm super lucky because there's somebody below me. And so I think about that for other people a lot. It's so so much if it's been taken. Somebody took the rug right out from under them. But as you say, Ray, it's not the end, but it's still important.
Harry will be back tomorrow for Spectrum Voices, the 555 Live. And he'll also be here every Sunday for the whole of 2026, alongside the group in different formats. Feel welcome to listen in, and remember, of course, that the backstage area is available for you to speak with other people who are autistic and share things with you.